Hello! It's me, Pippin, bringing you some hot P5.speech content, um, which is not really that hot. It's actually the most practical thing that we need to talk about, which is if we're going to start a new P5 project and we want to use P5.speech, how do we make the connection? How do we get P5.speech into our project? So that's what we're going to look at, just the practical nature of that. One good thing about this is that this basic process of finding the library and including it in a project is really the same for a ton, if not most, JavaScript libraries and frameworks. We do the same basic thing every time. So learning this is also learning a much larger concept. So without further ado, let's get into it. So luckily I've got a little list of what we need to do, otherwise I might forget. And we're going to do these 6 easy steps, which are hopefully easy. The first one is go to the website and actually find where it tells you can get the library from. So let's do that first. So on the P5 speech library, it's not exactly in big neon letters, but you can see 2 things here that are relevant. One of them is this thing that says download. So this will enable us to download the library. And what they mean by that is that we can download a file of the library. So let's do that. It's got this link here. It's not very well signposted, but we'll click on it. And this is something that can happen to you. It didn't download a file. It displayed the file of the library in my browser. So now I can just see what the library looks like. It's not very long, which is kind of funny. We could read it if we wanted to. A lot of this is commenting as well. It's pretty simple. But what we really want is to save the file. So I'm going to go to File up here, and I'm going to go to Save Page As. And that will enable me to save it as a file on my desktop. p5.speech.js is a good name for it. I'll save that down there. And there we go. Oh, find your downloads here. Thank you. I didn't know how to use Chrome. So now we've got this file here on my desktop. This is one way that we can obtain the library. The other way that we can obtain the library is this thing here, include from a CDN. And a CDN is a content delivery network, I think. Sometimes I'm not sure about acronyms. I always doubt myself. And the idea here is that instead of downloading a file, you can access the file from a website. And you can see here there's a script tag already written out for you that links you to p5.speech.js, except that instead of it being on your computer, it is somewhere on the internet. And the advantage of that is you don't have to download a file, right? And there are other advantages we can talk about there as well. The advantage of having a file is that you don't need to be connected to the internet to use the library, right? Whereas if we're going to use something that lives on the internet, we have to have a connection all the time. So there's some basic trade-offs to be made there. But if we want to include it from the CDN, they've given us the script tag to just paste into our project, which is what we need to take a little look at now, okay? So to do that, we're going to have to start a new project. The easiest way for us to start a new project is going to be to use a template. And so I'm going to go to the course website, as it is in this moment. And I'm going to go to the schedule, and I'm going to go to the templates link there. And I'm going to download the template P5 project. Whoop. And down it comes. So now I've got the template P5 project here. You are familiar with this process, as am I. I'm going to unzip it. I'm going to be sensible enough to rename it p5.speech experiments, maybe, because I'm going to probably play around with it. And if I were you, I'm not right now, but I could be one day, I would put this into my course repository, this folder here, because you might want to have a record of the experiments that you've been messing around with. Maybe you could make an experiments folder inside your repository and then put this in there. Once we've got our template project, we're going to want to open it up in a thing that's not open, which is VS Code, Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open that up. And I'm going to drag my project into VS Code. So now I've got the classic P5 thing going on, right? I've got preload and setup and draw, and you're familiar with all of this kind of stuff, right? Now, if I'm going to use the file, I'm going to want to put it in my libraries folder, right? So there are different ways of doing that. The easiest way for me on my Mac is just to drag it in, p5.speech.js. I'm going to put it in there. Bloop. I could, of course, also do it by opening this and going to the folder here, JS libraries, and I could have dragged it in that way as well. However you want to get the file into your libraries folder is totally fine by me. Having done that, the other big thing that we need to do, add the library file if needed, which we've just done, is add the script tag that will tell our project, hey, I just added a library, you should use it while we're working together in harmony and peace. And we add script tags in index.html. That's the thing that tells our project what there is. We've already got a couple here, right? We've got the p5 script tag that tells it where the p5 library is. We've got the p5 sound script tag that tells it where the p5 sound library is. We've also got the script tag for the script that we are writing ourselves. It probably makes sense for us to put the p5.speech one here. So I'm going to add a script tag here that links to libraries. I've just had that problem, which is super fun. / p5.speech.js. Close the script tag. And that's fairly frustrating, but there we go, we made it. I'm noticing that the Copilot's on, which I really, really don't want it to be. So how do I turn it off? Am I going to embarrass myself? I'm just going to ignore it. So we've added the script tag here. This is if we were using the file, right? So this is pointing us to this file here and saying that's where the library is when we want to use it. If we wanted to use the CDN, we would do kind of what you might expect. It really wants to add the p5.dom thing, but I'm not going to let it, which is we would get the script tag from the website. Remember we saw this thing include from a CDN. We would copy this script tag here, and we would paste it in right there. And that's the other way that we can include the library. If we're using this one, we don't need the file because we're using it from the internet. If we're using this one, we do need the file because that's what it's pointing at. Neither of these is really, really super better than the other. Since I went to the trouble of downloading the file, I'm going to use this one here. Remember, if you want to comment something out in any language, this is an HTML comment, you can use command / or I believe control / on Windows to toggle a comment. So that's me saying I don't want the CDN one. So now, in theory at least, the library is included. I'm noticing this, and I'm a good person, so I'm like, better change that. p5.speech experiments. Now it's got a good name. So what was I supposed to do next? Oh yes, I still don't know if it works. And to check if it works, what I can do is I can incorporate those basic things that we saw on the website. So remember, back on the website, we had these very, very basic ideas. The thing it wanted us to do was first make a new p5.speech object, and then to make it talk, I was supposed to do this speak thing. So what I will do is I will try and do that in my program. So up here at the top, I'm going to make a let, not a var, and I'm going to call it, what am I going to call it? Speaker? Voice? I could call it lots of different things. I'm going to call it voice, and I'm going to say new p5 speech, just like they told me to. So I've made a voice, and now I'm going to watch my neighbor coming home and get distracted. But then what I'm going to do, all I want to do next is, having made it, I want to tell it to speak, right? Now there are rules, as you know, about triggering audio on web pages without a user input. So I'm going to make a mouse pressed function here to avoid that problem. And this is where I'm going to speak. And that way I know that I'm going to have a user event that can trigger the speech. So I'm going to say voice.speak. She sells seashells by the seashore. Full stop. Point final. And then a semicolon, because I'm like that. Now I've got something that I can test, right? I made the object that does the stuff, does the speech synthesis, and I used the speak function or method to make my computer say something. So now it remains to click go live. Bibbidi bobbidi boo. I can't see anything because this program has absolutely nothing going on except a mouse pressed. I click.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
I assume you could hear that. It worked. So what this tells me is that the library is hooked up properly and my program is using the API appropriately in a very, very basic way. But like now I have a program that can say whatever I want, such as What can I make it say? Pippin, I really think you're doing a great job. Maybe with an exclamation mark. Let's try that.
Pippin, I really think you're doing a great job.
Thanks. Oh, that actually makes me feel kind of good. Okay, so that worked. If it didn't work, you're trying it with me and it didn't work, there are two main things that you should look for. The first thing is that you maybe didn't include the library successfully. So make sure that the file is actually where you thought it would be and that it has the name that you thought it would have. That's a classic thing that can go wrong. And then make sure there's no typos. Like if I accidentally called this SPI instead of speech, for example, now I'm not going to be linking to the library properly, so I've given it the wrong name. And what we'll see over here, click, 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 is that nothing is working. So I should open the JavaScript console, Command Option J for me. And I've got some errors, right? And the key thing that I'm seeing here is, well, it refused to, oh, this is really the main one, sorry. And we should always look at the top. Failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 404 not found. It couldn't find p5.spi.js because that's not a file. So that's a classic thing that can happen, is you're just not including it quite right. So do look for typos or other kinds of linking problems there. The same thing could happen with the CDN. And then the other thing that could happen is similarly like a typo. Like what if I call my variable voic, but down here it's called voice. Then I'm going to run into trouble again. If I click, voice is not defined because I've made a typo. These sorts of not defined things are usually about making typos. So just go through, make sure it's nothing like that. And if you cannot find it, just ask for help. You should immediately ask for help because you don't want to waste your time trying to figure out what it is. So we've got p5.speech working. We should get the speech recognition working as well. So let's just remind ourselves of what that looks like. Remember, it was a bit more complicated. We had to make one of these things. We had to tell it what function to call when it heard something, and we have to start the microphone, and then we have to have a function that responds, right? Notice here actually in this result that they don't check if there's a result. So that's kind of interesting as well. Remember in the other example we saw if it should do if there is a result, then do something. Here, they don't seem to care as much, which is nice. Maybe we don't have to care either. So let's do it here. So instead of a speech, voice thing, we're going to have a recognizer. Is going to be a new p5 dot, what was it? Oh, p6, that'll be advanced. New p5 dot speech rec, I believe, right? So we're going to make it there. And then we know in setup, we're going to have to tell it, and let me get rid of this right now because we're not going to worry about this stuff anymore. In setup, I could, of course, create a canvas and so on. I'm just trying to make the simplest conceivable program. It doesn't need a preload, for example. In setup, I needed to do those two things, right? I had to say recognizer dot on result, I think it was. And then I have to tell it the name of the function it should call when it heard me. They called their function on result. Oh no, they called their handle, they called it, what did they call it? Show result. I might prefer to call my one handle result just because I think that that's a bit more generic. And I need to actually write that function. I'm going to put it at the bottom, which is usually where I put my handlers. So a function called handle result. So what I've wired up now is that when my recognizer hears something, i.e. it gets a result on a result, it's being told it should call handle result, which is this function down here. What should it do? Well, maybe we won't do that yet because remember that there's one other thing we have to do. And if I don't do it, then nothing's going to work, which is I have to start the microphone so that it starts listening. That was the other thing that they do right here. And then the key little thing here is if there is a result, then we can find it in result string. We'll explore this more deeply, of course. So I'll do that. Console.log recognizer.result string, like that. So now, at least in theory, I would say something, it will hear me, it will say, this is what I'm supposed to call when there's a result, so it will jump down to here, and then it's heard me, so inside this thing, recognizer.result string, it's going to pop out what it thinks I said, if it can interpret my fantastic accent. So let's check that out. So it's asking if it can use my microphone. She sells seashells by the seashore. Oh, not bad. It actually got that. I was wondering if I would go fast enough for it to not get me. So you can see over here in the console, as promised, it heard what I said and it put it into a string, and I was able to print that string out into the console. Clearly we can do more than that, but this was just making sure that the two sides of the equation are kind of working for us. So we've tested it. Again, if you ran into trouble, you can think about those same kinds of problems. Is the library successfully loaded? Do you have any typos in there somewhere that might be causing trouble? If not, just ask for help. But the good thing is that now we have got the library. We're not just getting the library, we've got the library. And what that means, which is especially exciting, is we can start to play around. And that is where things get especially good. I'm looking forward to messing around with this. I love nothing more than to play around with new libraries and see what they can do. Let's try and remember the things that we were thinking about after we read about the library. What kinds of cool things do you want to do? What can we work out how to do with this that might surprise somebody? That's it for now. I'll see you in the next video about playing around with speech output or speech synthesis. Bye!